The UK's National Security Council was unprepared for terror threats from the Middle East conflict, insiders has warned. We're going to read into this exclusive from unnews, guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is REGANELITE here with an exclusive from unnews with the headline that the UK's National Security Council was unprepared for terror threats from Middle East conflict, the insiders warned. One former intelligence analyst at GCHQ told the Eye that the National Security Council is only able to focus on the crocodile nearest the canoe. It sounds like a more of unpreparedness again. Why did this happen? How did this happen? And what is being done to correct it, I think, is the question we need to ask ourselves. We need to be prepared for any and all terror threats that may come to the UK. And like, I know when it happened, the horrible attack by Hamas happened. Clearly before then that nobody kind of saw. It felt like that perhaps nobody kind of saw this coming, and in hindsight you maybe should have said, well, you should have seen this coming. But the tension is rising without a doubt between both sides in this conflict, and it's not helping anyone, especially for Muslims, Palestinians, for Jews, those who are just trying to live their lives. And it's you need to be on the ball, that is for sure. So the UK's Security Council is unprepared for the heightened terror threat linked to the Israel-Hamas conflict due to disruption caused by the Tory leadership turmoil last summer, senior intelligence sources have warned. The National Security Council, the NSC, is a central mechanism in the government's response and preparedness for hostile threats. Their regular meetings, spy chief and the heads of the armed forces brief cabinet ministers on threats to national security and policies are drawn up to plan for them. How much planning do you think this Conservative leadership does? Probably none. The NSC has been meeting in recent weeks to discuss and prepare for the rising terror threats following increased tension over the war in the Middle East, the Eye has learned. But 5 senior serving and former intelligence sources, including 2 who have contributed to the NSC meetings, saying the revolving door of prime ministers in 2022 and the under-resourcing of the cabinet office team, which supports the body, has left it underperforming and reactionary to the threats in what is placed to prepare for. If you keep changing the person at the top, you're going to means you've got to change everything around again. If you keep changing cabinet ministers, keep changing people around all the time, because we've had way too many changes, it's going to disrupt the flow of everything, and they can't do their job if they have to keep rinse and repeating everything and trying to initiate plans for the benefit of the security of the United Kingdom. Where is the security in all this? That's the thing. It's just not helping anyone in any way, shape or form. The NSC has been a useful form of interaction between the intelligence services, armed forces and policymakers, according to an expert at the London School of Economics. But its use took a downturn in 2019 during the premiership of Boris Johnson, before it was merged with 2 foreign policy committees when Liz Truss was Prime Minister. Earlier this year it was reinstated by Rishi Sunak, who looked to refocus the NSC towards modern day threats. One informer intelligence analysis at the GCHQ told the Eye that the ensuring damage done to the NSC by budget cuts to its supporting secretive meant it had struggled to get ahead of the curve and can only focus on the crocodile nearest the canoe. The meetings are advised and supported by a group of civil servants from the Cabinet Office and called the National Security Secretaries. They work under the UK's National Security Advisor through successive governments and to inform the NSC, but its effectiveness remains at the whim of the Prime Minister of the day, sources have said. Another senior intelligence source told the Eye that the body had become far too reactive to emerging threats, which was impacting the UK's preparedness. They need to be able to prepare for any and all situations in the UK, and if they can't do that, how are they supposed to be ready for all these things? They have to be ready for anything and every single circumstances. God forbid another terror attack occurs because of defunding and cuts to forces to things like this that can make a vital difference to looking after the United Kingdom. An ex-government employee who advances the NSC attendees ahead of meetings said that under-resourcing of the National Security Secretaries resulted in a few full-time staff and no contingency. The source said in recent years the body has been solely focused on dealing with security issues from China and Russia and is taking its eye off the ball over threats from the Middle East. I question the policy, strategy and capability to deal with more than one major issue at a time, he told the Eye. It's a central issue of resourcing and managing issues. It's the right decision to look at hostile state attention, but that shouldn't mean others drop off. Yeah, you should be focusing on all threats, not just one. A government spokesperson said the supporting group of the NSC, the National Security Secretaries, is properly resourced to robustly respond to emergency threats. They told the Eye it coordinates the work of government departments in support of the National Security Council and works alongside the new Cabinet Office Resilience Executive, the COBR, and through the COBR to ensure that the UK is prepared for or can respond to crises in the UK and overseas. It comes after Rishi Sunak chaired a Cobra meeting in Downing Street last week to discuss the threat of domestic terror and the risk of public disorder amid the conflict between Israel-Hamas. Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley has warned that terrorism is being accelerated by events in the Middle East. Two of Eye sources blame the NSC's unpreparedness for this threat on the change in government, which all places varying levels of importance on the body. A former intelligence official who now works for the government told the Eye with proper leadership, inadequate resourcing, clear accountability and levels for delivering action, the NSC could be a very effective arm of government, but warned that leadership from the Cabinet Office has waxed and waned depending on who has been Prime Minister, leading to an ad hoc approach to national security. And they told the Eye, as often happens under political leadership, the NSC tends to be a bit tactical and shorter term rather than strategic and longer term. So for us like myself, you guys, this is going to be explaining of what is the National Security Council here, and he's going to explain what it is. So the National Security Council, the NSC, was introduced by Prime Minister David Cameron and his coalition in 2010 as part of a range of new reforms to national security. The NSC met weekly to deal with security matters arising from conflicts in Iran to Iraq and Afghanistan. The meeting had high-level representation, including cabinet ministers from the Ministry of Defence, the Foreign Office, the Chief of Defence Staff, and the Chief Intelligence Agencies. Mr Cameron was religious about attending every NSC meeting, which meant he would take part in regular in-depth discussions with senior players on national security issues, an insider told the Eye. The meetings would focus on short-term challenges but would open debate on long-term predictions and strategies that did a good job at managing the risk to the UK, they added. NSC meetings continued when Theresa May took over as Prime Minister, but its use and focus suffered down under the leadership of Boris Johnson, multiple sources have claimed. During the premiership of Mr Johnson, the chair of the National Security Committee, the former Labour Foreign Secretary Dame Margaret Beckett accused him of taking a more relaxed approach to national security. Dame Margaret pointed to an interval revamp which reduced the number of meetings with the NSC down to 12 for the year, twice as infrequent as his predecessor. We are deeply troubled by the persistent signs that our national security is no longer a priority for the government, she wrote in December 2021. A contributor to the NSC's meetings at the time told Mr Johnson essentially dismantled the NSC, while another intelligence source said the Prime Minister wasn't interested in the council while he was dealing with the COVID pandemic. Okay, understandably, obviously, priority was the COVID pandemic, but it still should be looked after at the body if it helps and makes a difference to protect for security issues. Mr Johnson's representatives were approached for comment but did not respond. In the 2021 report, the Parliamentary National Security Strategic Committee called for the NSC to be reformed to reflect modern challenges. The MPs and peers criticised the NSC over both its response to the pandemic and the withdrawal from Afghanistan, saying both issues demonstrate why the UK needs a strong and purposeful NSC in fast-changing landscape and complex risks. Shifting global power to rapid technological intervention, yet they're so exemplary in different ways. Our inquiry most negatively finds about the ability of the NSC to make and implement strategies and to plan for crisis without rigour. Now, the thing about the withdrawal from Afghanistan, that was just a thing that was kind of thrown on people because America just kind of that was a decision by Joe Biden. Like, it was kind of, once they were going to pull out, everyone else had to follow suit. Like, did we see that coming? I think that's the question we need to ask ourselves. Did we see that coming at the time when it does? Do the MPs have a point? In a bid to slim down government operations during Liz Truss' 49-day run as Prime Minister, the NSC ceased to exist. By name at least, it was merged with two Johnson-era foreign-facing committees to form the Foreign Policy and Security Council. At the time, the former National Security Advisor, Lord Ricketts, feared the change would pull ministers even further towards short-term crisis management and mean that even less time is spent on strategic cross-government thinking at a time we need more than ever. Earlier this year, Rishi Sunak reinstalled the NSC, appointing Tim Barron as the National Security Advisor, increasing its funding to reflect the growing threat to the UK's energy supply and challenges posed by technology and cyber security. So Rishi Sunak has taken a more on approach to it, according to the NSC. A former advisor official sitting on the NSC said the government did not learn lessons from its response to the UK's withdrawal from Afghanistan, pointing to a scurry to deal with an emerging threat stemming from the conflict in Gaza. We didn't learn anything. Mistakes have repeated themselves, they told the Eye. We need a robust crisis management with teams who are properly trained. It's better to scale up and prepare rather than scramble in reaction to events. A former intelligence official who now works for the government's department said the institutional issues surrounding the NSC still remain and are nearly as important as the threats it is tasked with dealing with. Intelligence agencies are still using great intellectual thought to identify risks, but government needs to convert into something meaningful for the public's safety, they said. The intelligence framework can be as good as it wants to be, but essentially, when it comes through to giving information to the decision makers and the policy makers, it depends on the leadership, they told the Eye. If you haven't got the willingness at the top level to actually put in the effort to make them work, there's nothing going to happen. Security is vital for any nation, to be fair. Security is really important. Now, the National Security Council is it the most important body in the United Kingdom? I think it's a good question that I'd like to ask you guys in the chat, because my knowledge is very limited on the National Security Council, but I will say there are many other organisations that do their part too. But there needs to be an emergency body, an emergency prep for when the worst happens, when something terrible happens, and you're right there, ready to make a reaction to it, and prepare for these things, to any and all situations. And it's pretty clear that we've talked about how Boris Johnson has been one of the worst prime ministers in the worst possible time, in a situation where we needed strong leadership and we didn't get that. I welcome the fact that Rishi Sunak has brought them back, but I still feel like we are vulnerable right now. And I'd like to think that when Labour come into power at the next general election, whether they will invest in the National Security Council or dissolve it and perhaps do something different, I'm not sure. But this is very concerning, and obviously a threat, a worry to say the least, that we're unprepared for terror threats. So is it going to take an actual terror threat for us to wake up and realise that maybe we should be doing more to look after the nation? I'm a bit torn on this, to be fair. But what do you guys think? And what I mean by torn is, I don't mean as in, what I mean is that is the the UK's National Security Council, is it doing what it's supposed to do, is the question I guess I'm asking. Is it worth doing what it's doing? Is it right that we still invest in it? And if not, perhaps we should have a different body if it's in its failings, or is it just a case of underfunding? What do you guys honestly think? Let me know down in the comments section below what you honestly think about the National Security Council. I'm still torn. Let me know what you think. Like, share and subscribe as always. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.